Well, I am here with Eric Armstrong, who is the Democratic candidate in Iowa House District 20. And I was hoping you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for the Iowa House.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Burlington, Iowa, and born and raised in Iowa. And ultimately, I ended up in my career traveling around a little bit and doing some work. I worked as a commercial salesman, and we actually had an opportunity to travel globally. And I spent that time, and a few years ago, I retired. Now we're living in Carter Lake. My wife and I live in Carter Lake, been there for about 25 years. And so we have kind of the river to river thing going, right? Mississippi
Mhm.
to Missouri. And Carter Lake is actually the only town in Iowa west of the Missouri River. So that's something everyone needs to keep in mind. But
Yeah.
so a few years ago, I started working with Josh Turek. And we worked on his campaign a little bit, and that actually spent a lot of time up in the Capitol and helped him get a bill passed. Essentially, I was doing some grassroots lobbying for the bill, and we got it across the governor's desk. And along the way, we had two unanimous votes. And of course, I give all the credit to Josh, but I was out there trying to keep the glue together to keep everyone voting for it. So I spent I think I said that that year I went into the Capitol building over 26 times.
Mhm.
So literally I recognized at that point that there is room for a grassroots candidate and doing grassroots things. So Josh and I, over the last couple of elections, have become friends. And he said, "Well, I want to run for the U.S. Senate, but we need somebody to pick up this seat." And I was retired for 3 years, and I said, "Well, that's probably not a good retirement." But ultimately, we ended up coming back, and I'm very happy to have taken this. And it's really been an experience for me because I had never run myself. I had always knocked doors for Josh and said, "Well, I'm a volunteer for Josh Turek." But it's a lot different when you go and you say, "Well, I'm running for, and I'm the candidate." The experience out on the doors is great, and sometime, hopefully before the end of this week, I'll have knocked on 14,000 doorsteps within District 20.
Wow, that's a lot. Wait, I want to get back to the doors, but was this the boat dock covering bill
Yes,
that you
sir.
were
Yes,
working
ma'am,
on?
it was. Absolutely. This was House File 710.
I remember that from last year. I thought, wow, Josh, it's not easy for the any Democrat to get any bill
Yeah,
passed because the Republicans always have to run the bill and they don't usually want to do that, even for very uncontroversial,
right.
even for measures that are uncontroversial like boat dock coverings. But I do happen to remember that that was something that I think was important to people in Carter Lake. That remember that coming up during the House debate on it.
And it gave me an opportunity to meet not only the legislators themselves, but the lobbyists. Seems like every subcommittee meeting we had on something that, to your point, that is completely uncontroversial, we had a room full of lobbyists every subcommittee.
Yeah.
But it gave me an opportunity to meet them and to talk to them about different things, and as well as the legislators. I mean, we were able to glue them all together and get a couple of unanimous votes. And I have to say that there's a few legislators out there that actually had boat docks very much that would have fit in this new bill. So
Mhm.
that was one of the things that was driving it.
So you said you're pretty close to 14,000 doors knocked. When did you start? I assume you started last year.
Yeah, actually, I think it was around Labor Day. It was the Labor Day picnic that I was at when Josh finally convinced me to come on board. And
Mhm.
it took a few weeks to do what I call, organize my sock drawer and get everything kind of figured out what we were going to do and how we were going to actually get the campaign rolling. But by the end of September, I was doing, I think all I had was my little business card, and I was knocking on doors. I considered it kind of practice, but I went through Carter Lake and I knocked on a lot of doors. And the next thing you know, I had a baggie to hang on the door and a note in my business card. So I went out and knocked some more doors. And before you know it, I had my actual walking card, with the baggie and the note and the card. So we just kept kind of expanding it, but there was a lot of repeats in there. There's only about 10,000, a little more than 10,000 doors in the district, but
Sure.
I've had a lot of repeats. that
Well, it's in an Iowa legislative race, you can really attempt to make personal contact with a
yep,
pretty significant share of the people who will actually vote. That's what
yes,
a lot of
yeah.
people don't realize that. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were hearing from voters on the doors last fall, and has it been any different the last few months?
Yeah, no, it's certainly, and I call it the seasons. And it's not the fall, winter, summer, spring. It's literally the seasons relative to the national politics, maybe what's going on in Iowa Capitol. But for the most part, when a person answers the door, their main headset is around national politics.
Hmm.
And, immediately they want to kind of steer the conversation into what's going on at Washington or something like that, wherever we might be. And I always say, well, I'm not really here to talk about that. And if your dog's barking, you can talk to the city council. I'm here to really look at Iowa legislation and then kind of steer the conversation to that. So, but now the seasons of the door knocking have actually kind of opened up into different things, and that is where the people answering the doors, where their mindset is, and where their mindset is typically revolves around national politics.
Hmm.
Uh, during the Minneapolis shootings and the deaths in Minneapolis, there was a lot of contrition on a lot of people who were very strong, firmly right. And it was very evident when you go to the doors that they were in support of the people who had passed away in Minneapolis, and they looked at it as something that they were not proud of. And you could get that in conversation, their general attitude, how their posture, their just generally feel how they felt. So after that, that kind of settled down. Needless to say, they got that put back together. It went back to, I guess, what I would call just kind of the norms, and that is just kind of a baseline. Okay, these are strong right and these are strong left. Um, and then when the Iran war started and we started bombing in Iran, I felt a real strong emotional input from the Republicans' doors, especially the MAGA Republicans. I feel like they almost felt like their best friend had punched him in the nose and decided to do something he absolutely said he was not going to do, and that was start another war. And that emotion didn't come out as, well, gee, we love Democrats. It came out as just pure emotion and the anger that was leveled at that point. They were already ready to burst before I knocked on that door. And then when I actually knocked on the door, they came out and they were like, "Wow." I probably had some of my most difficult door knocking in a period, let's say within 3 or 4 weeks after the Iran war started. And then after that, now what I'm noticing, especially now as the gas price has gone up, the past month or so, I think people, the first time they filled up their tank with gas and they had to put an extra $10 to $15 in it was one thing. But now it's looking like it's a monthly budget type of thing. And I
Hmm.
have noticed that there's just a different mood on the door since then. But there again, the way I'm knocking doors, let me be clear about that, just to be transparent. I mean, I started in Carter Lake, and after the first of the year, I started at the river in Council Bluffs, and I've now worked my way over to the hills, what I call the Council Mountains. So those neighborhoods each have individual mentalities and individual cultures themselves, so that the people at the coming to the door today might not. So one of the things I've done is I've been kind of mixing it up a little bit. Let's go up into, let's say, an area that may be a little more affluent, and then let's the same day go down and knock some doors in an area that you may see a few more homeless people and so forth in the street. So,
Hmm.
um,
And clearly, you're not only knocking on Democratic doors. This is a
no.
district where to win, it's a district that voted for Trump. So,
Right.
do you feel that the Republican doors or the no party doors that you're knocking on, are they fairly receptive to talking with you?
Yeah, I think that most people, depending on what they're watching on TV at that moment, a lot of times people open the door and you see, okay, well, that's, but no, depending on their mood, I mean, people are people. They each have moods and they have, things going on in their life, whether or not it's dinner coming to the table or their kids or their dogs. But in general, what I've felt is that most people, when they see you're out, I mean, the way I introduce myself to people is I'm out to introduce myself to everyone. I want to hear your voice. And I try to listen because listening is what people want. Most of the people will say, well, I don't know that much about Iowa politics. And then we kind of, well, do you know about this? Do you know about the $1.3 billion budget deficit this year? What do you
Mhm.
think about the budget deficit for next year, et cetera, et cetera? So I kind of lay it out and then I draw in, one of my favorite lines when people say, "Oh yeah, everything in Iowa is good." I pat the side of the house and I say, "Well, what do you think about your property taxes?"
Yeah.
Because that generally emotes something as well, and that gives you the opportunity to talk about the tax laws and some stuff like that. But for the most part, it's getting the people talking that's important to me. Is I do want to hear what the people have to say.
And what are the top issues that you would like to work on if you're elected to the Iowa House?
Yeah, so economic development in Carter Lake and Council Bluffs is huge. Josh had run some bills called the 2020 bill, which was essentially giving some TIF money to the areas that were within 20 miles of the border.
Mm.
Um, Especially border communities right now. I mean, we have a lot of growth and development in the center of the state, in Waukee and Des Moines and so forth, but we need some of that tax policy to find its way to the west. And to the east too. I mean, I know Matt Moorfield, the mayor of Fort Madison, says the same thing that all the economic development seems to be centered more in the state. But for Council Bluffs, I can't tell you, Lori, how many times I've knocked on doors and literally you talk to the people, and every single person gets in their car every morning and drives to Nebraska for a better job
Mm.
simply because the jobs don't exist in the city of Council Bluffs. Same thing for Carter Lake. And when you look at Carter Lake, because we're so isolated in an area, if you look around the city of Carter Lake, there's billions and billions, multiple billions of dollars of investment that's growing in Carter around Carter Lake in North Omaha at the airport, et cetera. And yet Carter Lake is kind of frozen. There is no real. I mean, we have some retirement housing coming in, some things like that. But for the most part, Carter Lake is absolutely frozen. So that to me is an example of, if I started a coffee shop here in Carter Lake, I would get, let's say, the example I use is, okay, so you get a 10-year tax abatement, but I can go down the street here, literally just across the state line, and you get double that.
Mm.
So the policies in Nebraska, and I don't think most Iowans like to hear this, but the policies in Nebraska have been so much more towards development.
Mm.
And just to take that to the next step, and this is one of the things I see all the time is that the MIT does a study every year, and they look at what is the minimum living wage within a particular state. And for Iowa, they say in 2026, $21.20 an hour is the minimum living wage for a single person with no children.
Mhm.
And if we use that as a guideline, I suggest that you drive down Broadway in Council Bluffs, and if you're heading west, you show me a job that someone's working that's $21 an hour. There are none. I mean,
Mhm.
literally, I know the manager of the car parts store, and he's been working there for 15 years, and he only makes $19 an hour. So
Mhm.
no one's making the minimum living wage. But yet you look up and then you look at the horizon and you see all those buildings across the river in Omaha. And I would challenge someone to actually find a job inside one of those buildings that's less than $21 an hour. I think
Mhm.
they're all more. And that's just the type of economic development we have to have. We have to get Iowa restarted. I mean, we are, last in terms of economic development for a reason.
Mhm.
So we need to work on that. Because until we do that, we're not going to be able to do the property taxes and everything else. We have to have the rising tide floating all boats.
What school district is Carter Lake part of?
Council Bluffs.
Council Bluffs. And
Yep.
just generally, what's the feeling and the mood within the Council Bluffs School District? Have they lost enrollment? Are they steady? Or, what's going on? I know you have private schools in the area.
Right. No, they've lost enrollment to the ESA program for sure. The vouchers program has definitely hurt their enrollment, and the overall area, the mood and so forth is that we need to get the schools back. However, let me just say that I will give Council Bluffs a lot of kudos. The programs that they have with Iowa Western right now, relative to getting kids graduated from high school with an associate's degree, are awesome. I went to the graduation this year, and 139 students graduated high school having passed the program with Iowa Western. So
Mm.
that's a good thing. But the thing is we need the younger people growing up and so forth. I go to every single school board meeting and I see the stats and so forth, and you can see where COVID has made an impact. We need to get back to where we were a few years ago. And in my mind, one of the biggest things we need to do for education, and I've talked to tons of educators about this, is we really need to get expanded access to good quality pre-K. And I'm not talking about, grandma down the street doing pre-K. I'm talking about access to good quality. Because I believe, I mean, there again, I've knocked all these doors. The number of homes where two parents are working four jobs,
Hmm.
when will they ever get a chance to talk to their or read a book to their 3-year-old?
Hmm.
They're too busy. And this is just something that we have to get in the Iowa education system and start bringing Iowa back to the standard that we were. I mean, when I grew up in Iowa, we were number one.
Hmm.
And my wife was from New York City. She took the Iowa Test of Basic Skills in New York because we were the gold standard.
Hmm.
And we're certainly losing and we're shrinking. And I think the other states are also coming up. We've got some catch up to do here.
Hmm. Josh Turek has worked a lot about on healthcare issues and Medicaid in particular. Do you
Yep.
have any thoughts on any issues in that area?
Well, certainly, that Josh had kind of a lead on me relative to that. And I've always told people, I said, I understand what the Medicaid has done. Simply cutting Medicaid across the board does not reduce fraud. And that's what I'm seeing out on the doors, especially, is that so many people have been impacted by the reduction in Medicaid. And, it really does come down to, and something Josh taught me, is are they going to pay their bills or are they going to buy their pills this month?
Mhm.
And we have to be able to get Medicare and the Medicaid and overall health care back. And I think Josh has done a huge amount of work, to make that happen.
Right now, Republicans are running some polls in some of the Iowa legislative districts, testing a bunch of messages, negative messages about the Democrats. I was wondering if you'd heard of anything like that happening in your race.
You know, I haven't heard anything specific. About the only thing that I've heard is, well, we're not going to let Iowa turn into Minnesota or California.
Hmm.
And I don't know about that, but I feel very strongly that we need to do the good things for Iowa House District 20. And whether or not are going to become another state, I think is completely wrong. But I know that that's been one of the criticisms of, and I hear it on the doors too, right? And a lot of the animosity that people have, it's not towards the labeled Democrat, it's more towards the we didn't like Joe Biden and
Hmm.
we didn't see Kamala Harris as a solution.
I mean, politics is becoming so nationalized, and I've heard this for years. Even people running for county supervisor, I mean, they knock on the doors, and people right away
Yeah.
want to talk about
Yeah.
national politics. But what are some things that the state legislature and state government handles that you think people aren't aware of that they need to understand more?
Well, yeah, no, and people don't realize. I mean, no one really realizes what goes on in the Des Moines Capitol, and so much of what needs to be going on is around the budget and around economic development, about job growth in Iowa. Uh, and they people don't actually get involved in that. And I'm in a very urban district, right? Council Bluffs and Carter Lake is all urban, but the things that go on in the state house typically revolve around a lot of agriculture. And I think it's really important that people in an urban district understand that it's the uh, agriculture that really keeps us alive. And it's kind of hard to get your head around it, but nonetheless, if you look at the Iowa taxes and the budget deficits we have and so forth, it's because of maybe such not great property tax, how we tax agricultural land, things like that.
Mhm. Anything I didn't ask that you think would be important for people to know, either about you or about your race?
Uh, no, I'm really focused on the people, and I have to say that being out at first, when I started knocking doors, I looked at it as a little bit of a homework assignment, a task. But for me now, it has grown to be something much better. I mean, for me, it has become a privilege to go out and knock doors. And I personally have grown so much by seeing the things because, up until I started into this election, I kind of lived off in a corner of Carter Lake, but now I've actually had a chance to meet all my neighbors and actually start to see how things in Council Bluffs and Carter Lake fit together. And I didn't realize the challenges that we're being faced in either one of these cities until now. And there's just so much that needs to be fixed. And we're sitting right in the shadow of a economic powerhouse in the country. And everyone sees it and it's like, yeah, I'm going to get in my car and drive to Nebraska. So
Eric Armstrong, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. Good luck out
oh,
there on the doors.
thank you very much, Lori.